There we go. There we go. We are live. We are live. Brilliant. We're going to go over part one of Boynal and the anomalies. And I just wanted to emphasize again that, one moment. Yesterday, that the story is about Boynal and the anomalies. So it starts off, right? It's starting off with an anomaly for Biella, where she gets this incoming message from one of the delegates who's already returned. Now, that in itself isn't wildly anomalous necessarily, but it comes right exactly at the precise second of a knock on the door, which is it's very early in the morning, right? It's very unusual. And what makes it even more unusual is that it's the whole group, right? All the aspirants, Biella's friends, um, and Hayla and Ursula and Dream Deer and Camelius, everybody's there, right? So it's and the delegates. So this is like, wow, you came really early, and because it's anomalous, because it implies there's some organization to come early specifically, right? Unusually early, and it happens just at this time of the knock. And now, if you've experienced anomalies, then you'll know that this is what happens. It sort of defies logic and reason, but that's how it works. It's the most incredible thing that anomalies are like this. Why and how come they came early? We don't quite find out because that's also a peculiarity of anomalies. In this, that you would think it would be, kind of obvious for Biella to ask, "How come you early?" But somehow she never gets to ask that. She wants to, and it's like a der thing, but the momentum of events, they just prevent this from happening, right? And that also is how anomalies are, right? That sometimes you don't get to ask that obvious question. Not that it really matters, right? Because the explanation is going to be an explanation that makes sense of it in a way. But when magic is involved, when Moreness is involved, you end up with somebody's interpretation of that magic, right? And and in a case like this specifically, let's say it was now Nora or Aki or whoever, Kaljun or somebody, one of the aspirants, you would assume that arranged this. Could have been Ursula, could have been Ayla. Doesn't matter, right? You you're going to assume that somebody sort of arranged it and connected it, or it may have been that, for whatever reason, most were up already early, and somebody said, "Hey, why don't we go over to Biella?" Something like that. And then they just got the rest together and went, right? But typically, when you try to explain moreness, explain this anomalousness, right? And especially when it's happening to you, we tend to rationalize it and make it ordinary. And that takes a lot of the magic away, right? And one moment, one moment. Come on. Why can't I put the volume off? There we go. All right. And that's why, even though Biella wants to ask how it came about, brilliant, 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 brilliant. Sorry, just seeing there. Hello, Norma. Hello, Norma. I love it that you're here. Most wonderful. And Michaela's here too. Good morning. Yes, good morning to you, Michaela. That is most wonderful. She's going to be listening while she works. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right. Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Anyway, I was saying that in this, when we understand this, that anomalies are very difficult to describe. The At least when you right in the midst of it. Maybe afterwards you can say, but in the midst of it, you kind of have to act, right? And so this may come out later. But I just want to say that anomalies can be very difficult to describe, and it takes some practice because they are somewhat difficult to perceive in the first place, right? Because they are outside of what we normally perceive. And our habits, our tendencies from a lifelong habit already is to normalize things, right? So whenever we see something odd, oh, it must be this, it must be that, right? So be careful when you hear yourself say must be. uh, be aware that what you are doing is you are redescribing things into a more normal, more palatable, less odd, less unusual, less difficult, less problematic potentially, or we assume so, and we're trying to make something that is outside of our perception and therefore difficult to describe into something normal, right? And also we don't want to deal with the consequences of that unusualness, right? So when we say something, it must be, like you see it with people like, you know, you see in the couple, right? The one person says, "Hey, you know what? I smell smoke." It must just be whatever, and they minimize it because they don't want it to be smoke that is the building on fire because they're just too lazy and they're very comfortable and they don't want to get up and they don't want the hassle of having to deal with a burning building. It's the most incredible thing, right? That people do this. They will minimize and reduce things and normalize it into it's nothing, simply because they don't want to deal with hassle, right? So very profound thing. You say, but that's preposterous. That's utterly ridiculously, thoroughly, incredibly, insanely preposterous that somebody's going to minimize something like their house being on fire simply because they're comfortable and lazy and don't want to go and make an effort to check. But that's what happens, right? Now, of course, a lot of the times it is nothing, yeah. But you don't know. And that one time that it isn't, well, of course, then your house burns down and likely you with it because you weren't paying attention and you kept minimizing it, right? So be aware of this. Be aware that we as human beings can be preposterous. Yeah, we can be preposterous, incredibly so. It's just astonishing how preposterous we can be. And it's very important that we are able to comprehend that we can be preposterous, right? Because if we can't, then we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. So this is very important, that we understand that we can be preposterous, and others can also be preposterous. Because I've seen this many times, like in relationships, right, where somebody's involved with a BMN. The BMNs are utterly, utterly, utterly ridiculously preposterous, right? But their brains can't comprehend it. It shouldn't be this way. It can't be. Surely nobody's going to be that ridiculous, right? And so they normalize it and they, oh well, and start making excuses for it. It must be this, must be that, yeah. And the next thing, well, their house is burning. In this case, figuratively, which would be their relationship and all sorts of stuff, right? So we have to really be aware that, yes, sadly, there is much preposterousness in the world, and it does exist, and we have to be aware of it, right? Because if we're not, we are going to get burnt up in that fire of preposterousness. So being aware of preposterousness is really, really huge. Now, that's sort of on the negative side, being preposterous or preposterous behavior, and in BMNs and that. But there's a positive side to preposterousness, right? It's just a magical balance. What is an anomaly but something that is preposterous, right? This is a good description of anomalies, right? That which is preposterous, impossible, unlikely, ridiculous, right? But when you say impossible, in your brain says no, can't be. But don't think of it as impossible. Think of it as preposterous, because the preposterous, like in with BMNs, it's not impossible. They are actually doing it. It is just severely, ridiculously unlikely behavior, at least unlikely according to sensibility, right? So in the same way, an anomaly is unlikely according to how things typically behave. But just because that's typical doesn't mean that's always. We have to be very careful of conflating typical and always. It's not the same thing, right? It's absolutely not the the same thing. We want to have things be always. Why? Because once I've said always, I've got a nice rule, a nice, comfy, cozy rule that defines the world and keeps all the stuff all neat and tidy and keeps all the stuff that's dangerous and horrible and ugly and whatever and keeps it far away, right? So we love these always rules. It makes our world very neat. Of course, it's not true, right? In many, many, many cases, it's not true. So we have to be real if we are going to survive the exceptions. Yeah. And well, just ask yourself, have you had exceptions in your life? I know Norma and Michaela somewhat, and I know in their lives they have had exceptions, right? Not so nice exceptions. So it's very important. It's very important, right? And if you didn't have that always, and you have this openness to say, hey, things can be what they don't appear to be. They can be different. They can be anomalous. They can be unusual. They can be completely out of pattern. And then you can recognize them because you're open to this. Your brain is open to it. You can recognize it. And when you see it, you can act on it immediately and say, oh, it's not what it appeared to be at first. Okay, I got to change, right? I got to change. I got to change, right? So very powerful. Very, 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 very powerful. Most powerful. Did I do everything now? Yeah, almost. So I really want to emphasize this, right? And be aware of the power of anomalies, not just in themselves for what they bring by way of a message or a hint, a clue, a bit of a prompt, a stimulus. Anomalies come in many different shapes and forms, right? And it's very important to be aware of. They not always do the same thing. You can't just think of, oh, it's a message from the universe. No, sometimes it's just a clue. Well, I guess it's kind of a message in a way, but sometimes it's a little bit of a shove or a prompt or a hint, right? Or stimulus. So many different intents behind the anomalies. And the main thing to understand with anomalies is that you don't get the answer all clean and neat. You say, but why not? Well, sometimes you get anomalies that are like very super duper clear, but most of the time, that just if you think about it a little bit, you figure it out for yourself, and that's the point of the universe. It wants you to think for yourself. Yeah, it's utilizing the need that you have for some kind of resolution, perhaps some kind of action, some kind of motivation, whatever your need is. It's utilizing that and to leverage that so that you can enhance and develop your awareness. It's very cool. It's very, very, very cool. It's really excellent. Yeah. Oh, put the wrong description in there. Uh, hmm. Uh, why? Anyway, so anomalies are ridiculously powerful and really, really fun too. But the key point that I want to really emphasize here is that we have to train our brain to actually notice and see anomalies. Yeah. Like if your brain is trained for it, you're going to be walking along and you say, wow, look at that, check that out. And someone say, oh, what are you talking about? Yeah, it's just some weird bird doing some nonsense or whatever. And they'll give you some crazy explanation, or at least to them it makes much sense, right? But you like, but that's not. Then you realize what you see and what they could see are two different things, but they've taken this really unusual, magical, wonderful, preposterous, ridiculous thing and they've normalized it. Right? Don't do that. Yeah. Be careful of your own ability to do that. Because it's very wasteful. Yeah. Very, very wasteful. Why can't I edit this now? What's going on here? Hmm. Something is strange in the world of Facebook. Because that normalization of anomalies absolutely, completely, and utterly wastes them. Yeah. And also, when things are anomalous, to say, whoa, wait, this is an anomaly. Okay. That's very important. That's very, very important. Because if you don't, all right, take a nice example that Bina shared yesterday, right? Of when they going off to the train station on their vacation, right? and this just marvelousness of taking a long distance train journey. If you guys haven't taken a train journey, anybody, a long distance one, I highly recommend it. It's really cool. It's a very different experience. It's a lot of fun to it. Right? Uh, hmm, I can't edit this. That's very odd. We'll try again. And so on this, they're going to to the station, right? They got everything packed, and because they're going for 2 weeks on vacation, they got all their bags packed, everything, and they arranged for the Ubers and all this. So the Ubers come, two of them, right? Because there's 7 people altogether, and off they go to the train station. And the Uber that Bina is in with her brother, and I don't know who else was in that particular car. But anyway, this Uber starts dragging. Bina says that's the only word, right? Like it's just sort of struggling, like there's a resistance in it there. So her brother says it seems like your brake pad is stuck to the wheel, which is you got extra brake on. And the driver's like, nah, it's the engine. I said, look, dude, if this was your engine, it would have seized up by now already. So, there's nothing else that it can really be except a stuck brake pad. Brother knows about cars, obviously. Um, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter what the reason for it is. The end result is that this car is kind of dragging and it's starting to get hot and all this. But luckily, they make it. They get there in time, which is, right. you know, from an abstract point of view. Now, on its own, okay, stuff happens with drivers, but you think in an Uber, this would be a bit of a less chance of something of that nature happening. But anyway, it does, right? On its own, not so wildly, incredibly unusual. But then you combine it with the other Uber, right? Going to a completely different station. It's like, dude, how do you get this right? You're an Uber driver, you were given the directions and you go somewhere else. This is just beyond belief. Like, how did this come? When you combine the two together, you've now most definitely starting to get anomalousness, right? Um, and then when they actually get to the train and they get onto the train, because they make it just in time, right? And they have to run along the platform, which is also, forcing them to be a bit different and unusual. It's not particularly anomalous necessarily, but it certainly is out of the ordinary but they don't go around running around typically, right? Venus mom's there or auntie's there and all this. Anyway, so this all they're doing this, and then when they get inside the train and they look at their tickets and oh, hey, we're looking now for our compartment because that's what they booked, or at least this is what Farouk thought he booked because he did the booking, right? This was what he asked for, what he was assured that he got, but no, the trains are very unusual there. They have compartments on one side of the carriage, and then a little bit of a passageway, and then a row of single seats on the other side. I've been on lots of train journeys. I've never seen in the movies, never ever, or in books, never ever heard this particular layout, right? So to me, that's already anomalous. It may not be for Bina anomalous because she's never been in trains before, and doesn't have much experience with them at all. So I guess it's just something the way they do the trains over there. But all right. So they get there and none of the compartments are for them. Their seats are on those single seats, 7 of them all in a row. It's like, really? Seriously? And they try and get the conductor and everything, and he explains that the people that book the tickets, they do this, they say, and then they don't because I guess they're hoping for a bribe to get the compartment anyway. So it's a big mess, right? And there's no resolution. But now Venus already perceived this that the things with the drivers in her car with the brake came on, she already knew that this was anomalous, right? And she started to pay attention as to what's going on here. Then when the other thing came and that the second car came too late, so they didn't get the luggage from that, which all right, it's not the end of the world. At least it's not lost, to go home. But because the uncle was in that car, he's not coming with on the trip, but he was kind of supervising that. So, all right, they without some of their luggage, which included their food and everything. And then with the seats and everything. So, things are sort of threatening to get a bit down. And Bina makes this effort to be positive and moreness and point out the moreness and attitude and mood and does all sorts of things that, Way of Impeccability and Moreness project tools that she applies, right? And she turns it around. And she's aware of this, right? She uses the anomaly, she connects to the anomaly and gets the benefit of the anomaly. And she said for her the anomaly was the resistance that one faces from losing your comfort zone, right? So that heat, that break, that dragging, right? And so she said this to the family to say, look, we have to be aware that we might have some resistance to stepping outside of our comfort zone. And when she, talked about this and chatted about this, oh yes, okay, and then then it all fell into place, and then everybody was happy. And okay, let's make the best of it, right? And they did make the best of it, and it was all brilliant and all awesome. And that's just like I don't know, I find that so awesome. And but that's exactly what Way of Impeccability and Mourners Project Living is all about. Ah, brilliant, Norma. I'm glad to hear that you've been on train journeys. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. I love that. I love that. Oh, I see what's going on. Hold on one moment. Hold on one moment. I got to change things here. And in this, it's all really magical. And so anomalies, when you pay attention to them, they are gifts. They are gifts from your deeper self, your subconscious, if you want to look at it that way, or they are gifts from the universe. Yeah. And any gift from the universe is a most incredibly precious thing, right? And when you become aware of it and you connect to it, then you get incredible value out of it, right? And that's very important to be aware of. This huge big value that you get. It's a big deal. It's a very, very, very big deal. Yeah. Talking about Bina, where are you, Bina? Where are you, Bina? She said she was going to be here, but they went to go and meet people and all that. So uh all right, so I'm explaining now, Norma, what the relevance of Bina's train journey is to the theme of anomalies, because her train journey started off massively anomalous, and there was more anomalies on the train journey, towards the end of it, and at the very end of it. And but Bina will tell more when she comes back, right? So she'll let her tell that story. So this is very cool. This is very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. Was that yesterday? Yes, yes. So I'm answering your question today that you asked on yesterday's one, right? Oh, I put the wrong description in there. Okay, I messed up a bit, but oh well, what can you do? It is what it is. It is what it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Um, did that answer the question about the anomalies, Norma? The relevance of Venus anomalies to uh to the story, because the story, the chapter is called Boynal and the Anomalies, right? So it starts off with Biella contemplating the inordinate made manifest. We'll go through that in a moment and then we'll see, right? So all right, I've got everything sorted and done. Seems a little weird today. I don't know. Something is strange in Facebook. I'm not exactly sure what. All right. Well, just persevere. I'll just persevere. I guess maybe it's just because I'm talking and trying to do all the sharing and stuff there. So you gotta split your brain a little bit. Well, I was multitasking pretty well, I gotta say. I got it all done. So okay. Okay. Did you travel across the continent, Norma, with train? I hope so, that you traveled across Europe in train. When I went to Europe as a young man, we had Eurail passes. I don't know if they still do them or not, but you could only buy them outside of Europe. So I don't know, I suppose you could buy them in England. Yeah, time does seem strange today. Exactly. Anyway, the Ural pass, what it was is for, like 3 months or whatever the time period was. You pay one lump sum and you can travel on the trains as much as you like, go anywhere, right? So that was how we traveled all across Europe, and it was really fantastic. And we would sleep on the train sometimes. I mean, it's not the most comfortable because the chairs recline a bit, but they don't, not for sleeping, right? So it's okay every now and then to do, or but every now and then you actually need a good bed also. But uh, oh, you traveled coach. Wow, okay, wonderful. But did you go to the continent to be there, Norma? That's what I was wondering. Just England, or England, Scotland, Wales. Oh, trains, just in that. I got you. Okay. Uh, one moment. All right. Train's normal for Londoners. Yeah. Oh, you did go to Europe. Oh, brilliant, 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 brilliant. So I was saying, sometimes we just get on a train and not care where it was going, and we just getting on there to sleep, right? And then wherever we ended up, if we wanted to go somewhere, we just go right back again. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We just traveled around. It was just really fun to do that. It was very cool. It was very cool. And at least our experience on that train was just, every time we went, people were so friendly and positive, and they could see we were traveling. And mostly the people that are on the train are business people, and going to work and stuff like that, uh, going to the office. But doesn't matter, they were always kind of interested and eager, and that they listened, and were interested and asked questions, and and engaged, if you wanted to, of course. It's just fantastic. It was really cool, really cool. So I recommend that, if you're going to go traveling on places, to travel by train, or by boat is kind of hard in today's world. But and but by train is now, you can interact and connect a little more than you can on like a plane. Yes, on a plane you can chat to people kind of in the same row of seats next to you, but in a train you can kind of connect a little bit further and more. It just seems a little bit more spacious. I don't know. It just seemed a little bit easier to connect than on planes. Well, I suppose you can on planes too, but a plane too, I don't know, you're more compressed, and it's a different connectivity, just the way the seats are and everything. So, in the trains, typically the seats are like some facing each other, right? So you sit facing people to talk to, which, that's really cool. All right, I better get onto the onto the thing. I'm getting distracted by all sorts of stuff here, people messaging me and whatnot. I want to go over the story. I want to go over the story. I was hoping Bina came. She said she was going to come, but stuff happens, and I trust that. Well, I know from plenty experience already that things happen, and it's out of Bina's hands, and nothing she can do about it. So it just is what it is. Let's see. Let me get to. Here we go. Here we go. All right. Too wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I love that you've been on trains. This is, like I say, I really recommend it. And Michaela, the first opportunity you can get, it doesn't matter where you go, right? Get some train tickets, and you and the kids, even if you just go, 2 hours away to a city, like on a Saturday or Sunday, and then you come back, just do it. Just do it. It's not that expensive. Yes, I know, but just do it. Make a point to do it. Yeah. It's worth whatever you invest in, if you at all possibly can, right? It's really, really worthwhile. Yeah. All right. Chapter 16, Boynal and the Anomalies. I'm going to screen share, Bina, so that you can read along. I know you particularly don't like reading along, or don't care to, or don't make an effort to, or don't want to. I'm not sure, but you like to just see the video. but but it is helpful. It is helpful, especially when I'm doing the capital R readings like this. All right, chapter 16, Boynal and the Anomalies. As long as we are inside our self-created flawed legacy system. Wow. That's quite a thick, dense statement, right? So now we're doing the capital R reading. So we're going to break these down as we go through them. As long as we are inside our self-created flawed legacy system, which means our legacy system is also self-created. That seems to be a contradiction there, right? But what do we mean here? So our legacy system is our beliefs, our habits, our shoulds, our musts, our supposed to be's, right? That's our system. But it's self-created because we choose to adopt these things as our own. So even though it's legacy, it's also self-created and works together. We have to pay attention to the stuff that we just kind of say and therefore make our own, but we haven't specifically chosen it, right? We need to consciously choose, not just choose in terms of self-created, like adopting and assimilating, no, and just utilizing because it's there. No, choose it, choose it, choose it. We have to reach outside the system for something to base our trust on. This is a very deep, profound sentence here. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's sort of, yes, in the nature of quotes, there's a bit of a jump here, right? As long as we are inside our self-created flawed legacy system, and it doesn't say as long as what, right? So it's not finished, right? But then it jumps and it provides that by implication, right? So we have to read a little bit more astutely here. We have to reach outside the system for something to base our trust on. If we know our personal system is flawed, we carrying over beliefs and ideas and all sorts of stuff from just from society, from should, from DNA, from who the heck knows where. And this is just a mess, right? And so how can I trust this? I can't. Right? So I need something outside of this broken system which we live in, our society, our paradigms, our beliefs, our ideas, all of this stuff, right? It's all broken, it's all a mess. So I need something outside of that, right? And of course, this is typically where religion tries to come into it. But when you really look at religion, how much of it is really actually pure religion, and how much of it is those that are utilizing the system. Right? I mean, like religion where it's like pure spirituality, as it were, which is sort of the idea. No, religion is the system of people looking to push their flawed legacy systems onto you, manipulate, control, have their ideas become your ideas, and it's the same problem again, right? So religion, sadly, religion, not the truths underlying religion, but the way it's being presented and distorted and all that, right? Those are the problem. So I'm not anti the underlyingness. I'm really just, I'm not even anti-religion. I'm just saying pay attention and be careful. Learn to extract the value from religion. Don't just absorb it all as being valuable, because then you're just being mindless. And of course, it's not all. I mean, it's very evident. You just read any scriptures, there are lots of contradictions and a lot of weird stuff in there. It's like, really? Seriously? But most people, when they read it, it's like anomalies. They just don't even see it. They don't even, when they read it, it just goes like, I don't know, it's like they get into like this funk and they don't notice it. It's kind of fantastic. So pay attention to this, right? But when we start to pay attention to things outside of the system for us to base our trust on, now we've got something. Now we've really got something, right? If there is such a thing. This is how we come to use the universe as a source of trust. Yeah. And the universe, and why am I saying universe and not God or Allah or Buddha or Krishna? Because the universe doesn't have the baggage that all of those have, right? I mean, you take any of those. Buddhism is a good example, because Buddhism, we have a bit more documentation than we have in some of the other systems, right? And when you look at what actually Buddha said, his actual quotes from himself, and you look at Buddhist religion, it's two completely different things, right? It's like worlds apart. A religion's all about worship. I mean, the very last thing that Buddha was teaching was to worship him. Like, this is just a preposterous, ridiculous idea, right? Buddha's whole message was for you to become a Buddha. Buddha's not his name. His name is Siddhartha Gautama. Buddha is a title, it's a condition, it's a state of being. Anybody can become a Buddha, right? This is what he was trying to teach. You become the Buddha, not come and worship me for having been a Buddha. This is ridiculous and preposterous, right? So, yeah. The universe last week mentioned. That's too funny. No, that's brilliant. I love that. Uh, Now, anyway, so when we take, Buddhism, and you understand that, that this is not ideal because it's very difficult. And also, when you are dealing with somebody like Buddha, right? Much of it, yes, there's some effort at explanation, but the level of ability to articulate isn't quite what it is now. So you end up in a situation where you kind of being asked to believe somebody, and that's always dangerous, right? So we want to have something where we don't have to rely on belief, right? So this is why anomalies are anomalous, because they do not belong to that system. And if you start to pay attention now, we're saying, "Wow, I want something to trust that's outside of the system, something that I can trust." Right? So I have to have an anomaly, because an anomaly by definition is that which is from outside the system that you know. Yes? So the language of the universe it's a very broad language, but anomalies are part of the greater language of the universe. Yes, the flow of events, for instance, would be another thing. Yes, and just the patterns and stuff like this. So there's many aspects to the language of the universe, but anomalies are a chief component, right? And they have to be anomalous, because you are now connecting to something that's outside, right? If you're going to connect to aliens, they're not going to be speaking English or Urdu or whatever. Eh? That would be really, really something if they were. And they wouldn't be alien if they spoke Urdu, because you would immediately understand them by definition. Yeah. Even if they lived on another planet, they wouldn't be alien. It would just be Urdu speaking people on another planet. Or maybe they look different, but it doesn't matter. If they spoke Urdu, they're going to have because a language has definitely got a large measure of influence on our beliefs and our ideologies and all that. It shapes us, right? So you're going to have similarity. You're not different, right? So this is why the language of the universe, because it's so ridiculously different to us, kind of has to be via anomalies, right? Right. This is why anomalies are anomalous, because they do not belong to that system. They are from outside, from the crafting of conscious. This is a very powerful quote, and yes, if this was written out, and or like I just was explaining, it's a much longer thing. That's what makes quotes kind of powerful, that they don't necessarily go step by step. They jump a little bit, they connect, and they're connecting you to the moreness, to the ineffable, and to the greater system, right? So you have to kind of put things a little bit together and allow yourself to connect via, a quote of this nature or a poem. Yes. So an anomaly, Norma, I'm talking about like what happened with Bina, right? That was an anomaly. The first Uber having this peculiar, really weird thing happening of the brake pad sticking to a wheel. That's the first time I've ever heard of this happening. Maybe I understand how the brakes and the brake pads work, so I realize it can happen. But I've never known anybody, and through my life, I've obviously known lots of people with cars and everything, and talked about, oh, this happened, this did, my shocks broke down or whatever. I never heard of that particular problem, right? And which is really interesting. Uh, so it's not that common, obviously, right? Although of course it can happen, but to happen in an Uber on the way to the train, and you're just getting there barely in time. It's outside of statistical probability, right? Makes it an anomaly. It's just weird, just odd. It's kind of magical in a way, right? That's what anomalies are. And I was using Buddhism as an example of why we want to look at a system that we can trust, but not use religions, because they have all sorts of other problems, right? Religions come with baggage, and Buddhism turned into a religion, and there's a whole bunch of them, right? I mean, you got the greater wheel and the lesser wheel, and Tibetan Buddhism. There's all sorts of different types of Buddhism, right? I mean, they have stuff in common, absolutely, but they're all still very different. But they're still a religion, right? And a religion involves worship. The very last thing that Buddhism is about is worship, yeah, and because it's a philosophy, Buddhism. There's no deity to make it into a religion. But people, in their foolishness, have made Buddha into a deity, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely preposterous from Buddha's point of view, right? When you read Buddhism. So it doesn't matter what Buddha said, people want to make it into a religion, right? So I was just using the point there that we can see this very clearly in Buddhism, right? In other religions, it's so much further back and it's so much more distorted that you don't see the origins and the roots. So that's been lost now. So you only have the distorted thing, and the propaganda point of it, in other words, right? That people are looking to push for their own agendas, right? And this is really sad. It's a sad thing. Not that there isn't value in religions, but you have to extract it. You have to pull it out for yourself. Right? But still, whenever you have to rely on belief, then it's difficult to trust. Yeah, it's very difficult to trust. So the point here is just using Buddhism as an example, Norma. That's all. As an example of a system that has become a big mess, right? I mean, yes, okay, people get value out of it, but it's got nothing to do with what Buddha was trying to share or teach, right? Well, he didn't necessarily have the share mindset like the new nobility. He had that teach mindset, and that's problematic because when you're teaching, you're saying, believe me, believe me, believe me. That's essentially what teaching is, yes, or a big part of it. That's very problematic. See, how do you trust when you've been asked to believe? Based on what? You maybe sincerely believe that what you are saying is true and good and wonderful, but that doesn't mean that it actually is so. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, there's all sorts of different kinds of Buddhisms, like Zen, which is trying to get to the original teachings and be more focused. But the other parts of Buddhism, it all involves elaborate rituals and, praying and all of this stuff, worship. That's just completely outside of what the Buddha taught. So again, we get so long after the fact, that we can't even trust what the words that we get told Buddha said are what he actually said. Right? Same thing with Jesus, it's very hard to do that, because there's so much happens in between. We are trusting what we have been passed on to us, but somewhere in that passing on, people change it and adapt it and do for their own purposes, right? So it's a difficult system to trust. And this is the point here, right? Now we get into anomalies. Anomalies are saying, hey, we want to put our trust in the universe, but how do I connect there? Via anomalies, right? And this is a magical thing. So we're opening up a doorway here to moreness. And we talked about attunement earlier in the story. Anomalies go hand in hand with attunement and alignment. They make this wonderful power triangle, right? Attunement, anomalies, and alignment, right? And they are the way for us to connect to the universe so that we can be in attunement. And once we're in attunement, then we can pick and choose when we wish to align, right? Like the surfer, they attune to the waves and then they can choose to catch the wave or not. Catching the wave, riding the wave, that's alignment, yes? It depends on love, yes. Lots of love in original Buddhism, yeah. Very powerful, very deep love philosophy, absolutely, absolutely. I was very influenced by it as a young man. It changed my life. Right? It was a very big deal. It's a long story. All right. Biella was thoughtful. The free chat was later, but not on her mind. It would flow as it flowed. There was no preparing for it, nor would anyone want to. Yeah. No. All right. I just want to edit this here. So I use this opportunity to edit as well. We say there was, it was. They don't need to be there. Look, it would flow as it flowed. No preparing for it, nor would anyone want to. See, the there was is superfluous, right? It's totally unnecessary. I didn't have to have it there. Yeah. So I like to think of my words as employees, employees that I pay. Yeah. There's a cost for having the words here. So if they're not doing anything, then I don't want to be paying them. Sorry. No. It's not very good. So that's just a kind of a mental trick to help me to not have superfluous words, right? And and you say, yeah, well, what's the difference? It would flow as it flowed. There was no preparing for it, as opposed to no preparing for it. Why cut those extra words out? They produce reader fatigue, right? So when you read something and it's flowing nice and smoothly, you may not even realize it, but those unnecessary, obvious things that don't need to be there have been taken out for you by a good writer or typically by a good editor. Yeah. So it's just a little small thing, but just good to be aware of, right? Don't belabor your reader with superfluous words. Now, again, I'm writing this for me, but I like to have that as well in there. So it would flow as it flowed, no preparing for it, nor would anyone want to. No. What she was thinking about was the inordinate becoming manifest. Right? Put that on another line here. Right? What she was thinking about was the inordinate becoming manifest. You see what I do with this style, right? This is a very different style of writing a novel. I have this same novel in prose form. Okay? Right? Like this, like you typically would write a book. But I saw, at some point this was an idea that I had that I thought, I want to write a book in this. I call it prose poetry. It's not poetry, but it's breaking the up into this line, right? Because look how I had that before, right? What she was thinking about was the inordinate becoming manifest. If you put it on one line, that's how you read it. But now, when it's on two lines, even though there's not a comma there, you're going to put in that semi pause. A comma's a longer pause, right? But but when it's on the line like this, what she was thinking about was the inordinate becoming manifest. See, there's that tiny fractional little pause there, which now emphasizes this line, right? I'll read it again. I'm going to read it as if, well, let me do it like this now. Okay. What she was thinking about was the inordinate becoming manifest. What she was thinking about was the inordinate becoming manifest. You see, the second one, when it's written like this, it emphasizes this, the inordinate becoming manifest. And it's meant to be emphasized. It's a big deal, right? The inordinate becoming, not being made or the inordinate made manifest, but becoming in the process of doing so. It had become a theme for her, right? A thread running through everything. She saw it happening everywhere. And if we look at the story for Biella up until this point, right? Everything is about this inordinate becoming manifest. Yes. The whole story is all about this. Yeah. Every chapter, there's something inordinate that becomes manifest, right? It's really cool, right? It had become a theme for her, a thread running through everything. Now, the more we live, and it's not just in the story, how Biella's whole life is like this, because Biella, from very early on, understood about attunement, right? Without words. Biella didn't speak until she was 8, by the way, just on a little extra history background here, right, for Biella. Because her mom, Sylvina Da, it's a wonderful story. Sylvie woke up one night for this knocking on her door, but it was a dream, and the dream said there's a baby on your doorstep, right? And it's like, in the dream she saw this baby on her doorstep, right? But she heard the knocking as well, right? It's like, did I dream this or was it real? Anyway, she goes and looks, and lo and behold, there's this baby on her doorstep. Now, Sylvie is very high powered consultant. She consults to the all the the top people in the world in business and politics and all this. So she's like somebody whose security is very important, and she lives in a place that has cameras and security and all this because she's dealing with intimate consulting with all these people, and so she knows the secrets of the world, as it were, right? probably more than anybody, any one single person, because she knows the personal secrets as well of people, because she's doing consulting not only in a business and political sense, but on a personal level also, right? So, she's like a strategic consultant, and you got a problem, you go to solve it, right? If you can afford it, right? Anyway, so, but on the cameras, there's nothing. So this is an anomaly. This baby just turning up on her doorstep. And she calls the baby, well, she's got a long name, but that's Biella, right? So Biella doesn't have a last name. She doesn't call her Biella Nadar. She just has a single name. At any rate, this and then when with bringing up Biella, she's always there when she does all her consulting via video conference, right? Like Zoom, something similar, right? So Biella's off camera, right? Just like like now, my hand is off here. You don't see my hand, but there could be a baby right there, right? Or it can even be a baby on my lap, right? You wouldn't know if I had a baby on my lap, right? So Biella's always there. But early on, Sylvie has. I want to go and diverge a little bit, a little background here, because I think it's very cool the background on Biella. And since I'm now in the mood of it, I'll share a bit, right? Pity that Bina's not hearing this, but I'll tell the story again. So Sylvie is different. She's very different. She's not in the same space as a new noble. She didn't quite go into that spiritual part of it. But from a strategic point of view and understanding psychology, she's awesome. Absolutely just spectacular, right? So she understands one thing. She says, this idea of talking to your babies in baby language is just ridiculous. This just never ever made any sense to her. You're teaching somebody in when they are most impressionable to basically you're teaching them a bunch of garbage, baby talk, baby language. Why? The baby's not trying to talk baby talk. The baby is trying to say things in the words and express, but it can't. It doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the muscle control, doesn't have the language yet, right? But it's trying to express itself. I don't know if you know anybody, but I know people who have actual memories from before they could speak, right? They remember things very clearly, and they remember trying to tell their mother stuff and saying it to the mother, but it obviously didn't come out in the words, right? And they were talking to the mother, but the mothers didn't necessarily respond, right? Like Elivia's told this story. She had this experience where her mother was trying to get her off the bottle and onto a sippy cup, kind of wean her from the bottle to the sippy cup. So she says, "Oh, like Olivia's like, hey, where's my bottle? And the mom gives her the sippy cup and say, oh no, a birdie took your sippy cup, your bottle. And Olivia's like, yeah, but I saw you put it there behind the curtain. Ugh. She's telling the mother this, right? And so she was it's a very like shifting, not traumatic necessarily, but in that moment she was aware that her mother could lie. So that bubble is sort of a bit broken there. But she's trying to tell the mother, it's like, no, the sippy cup is over there. She's talking to the mother, but the mother's not listening, right? So we babies aren't trying to baby talk; they're trying to communicate. So Sylvie says, I know this, and also understand about emphasis. So the things that get told to small young children, right? If you think back, how many things you heard back then that made a deep impression on you, and you still stuck with. Especially think of things that you heard at school because we tended to listen to other kids much more so than our parents because there's sort of a vibe that your parents are telling you things and kids don't listen to their parents, and there's this the cueing of it. So of course you don't. That's what you sort of you pick up from the culture. But other kids, oh my God, when they say stuff, you listen so with rapt attention. And how much absolute total rubbish did you not end up believing because of other kids, right? I mean, I've seen kids like traumatized and terrorized because of some idiotic nonsense, fable, story, just rubbish that they make up just to tease the kids, yeah? And it's terrible. So we have to be very cautious of this. So Sylvie says, nope, I'm not going to go that route. Yeah. And I'm going to speak to Biella as if she's an adult. All right. She can't speak back. I can't hear her, but doesn't matter. So she tells Biella, says, don't worry that you can't express yourself right now. Right. Just keep talking. At some point, it will fall into place. Secondly, think about what happens when you do start talking. You start describing your world. When you start describing your world, you think you know your world. Yeah, most people don't. Yeah. So she says, if you really want to know the world, just absorb, pay attention, learn, and you'll discover all this magic and wonder. Now, I'm not going into the whole long explanation of so because she says this over and over to Biella as a young child. But Biella hears this and she understands the magic and the value because kids want to learn, they want to know more. And she realizes that this actually observing and just taking in the world, letting it come to you, being this unbiased witness, that this is an incredible joy as well as super, super, super valuable, right? Yeah, the teachers aren't the only teachers. Exactly, the whole world is our teacher, but a very special kind of a teacher. Right? Teachers tell you, the world doesn't tell you. The world shares, gives you the option to choose, right? And this Sylvie also does with Biella. But Biella grabs onto this. So as a result, she's absolutely 100% content to simply absorb and listen, right? And this is what she does, and she has no need to speak, right? Because she's always learning, and she realizes that if I start speaking, I'm going to stop learning, because that's typically what happens, right? The moment you stop speaking, you stop taking things in, right? And it changes your brain in terms of how you are doing things. Yeah. So learning and talking is not the same thing. So she does. The only reason she actually starts speaking at 8 years old is because Sylvie ends up with diarrhea, right? So Sylvie has a call, a scheduled call, and it happens to be with the leader of the world at that point in time on on Biella's world or Sylvie's world. They had started to have a united world, so they had a world leader, right? Which they were right on the verge of making contact, or maybe already had made contact with the agglomeration, right? But weren't in the agglomeration yet, and it wasn't public knowledge yet, and so it was right at that cusp there. So anyway, so this the leader of the world comes on, and where's Sylvie? Yeah, but Sylvie is right at that moment struck by this really bad, terrible diarrhea, and she's on the toilet. So she just says to Bella, "Hey, just you talk to him while I finish up here, right?" Okay. So Biella says Sylvie's indisposed. She can't come right now. Those are her first words, or something to that effect. I'll have to still figure out exactly the words. Wow. And now the leader has known that Sylvie as a child, but's never seen Biella before, right? And he's like, "Wow, yeah, this is pretty wild, right?" And he sees this child as different and an anomaly because he's in a bit of a personal crisis, right? And he's sort of doubting his own self and all this. So he just happens to he's making conversation with a child. He doesn't take it very seriously, but like a politician, they're always thinking of voters and future voters and their perception of them. And he sees the child as very pure. Yeah. So he asks Biella, "What do you think of me?" Not really expecting an answer, but he realizes, well, I'm going to talk to the child while I wait for Sylvie. Oh my gosh. Does he get what he doesn't expect? Yeah, Biella is not a normal child. She's been paying attention. She's been learning all of what Sylvie has, got in terms of insights and discernments and understanding of people and psychology. And Biella's absolutely absorbed this, but she doesn't have any filters, from politeness and all of this. She just gives it to this politician completely raw, gives him an analysis of himself that he's never had from anybody because nobody's ever wanted to tell him the awful truth. Biella lays this awful truth out for him, and he's devastated. He's completely wiped out by it, but also at the same time thankful and impressed, right? So he becomes Biella's friend, a huge friend of Biella's, because she basically saves his life from a spiritual soul point of view, right? Yes, Sylvie was helping him to manage his BS, manage his nonsense, and make the best of it. But Biella came and crashed the system. And in crashing his system, he got to get to the real truth, and then he became a real superpower as a leader, right? He became a really awesome, good leader, and because of this, they were able to connect to the agglomeration and then the new nobility. And anyway, it's a long story more, but I just wanted to share that part of it. This starting. When learning, it is hard to keep listening as our minds keep exploring the paths instead of the roads. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, we have to stay focused. This is why, Norma, this is why Way of Impeccability starts off. Module 1, Session 1 is called Clarity of Intent, and the subtitle is Focus of Purpose. That's precisely why we need to cultivate this ability to stay on the main road, but be able to go down a detour and come back. Yeah, that's fine. You can go on those detours, explore the paths as you say, but stay on the road, right? This is clarity of intent allows you to do this, and I call it holding on to your center column, right? So I can go on massive digressions, but I always come back to it and what I'm doing because I know exactly what I am doing, and I'm aware of what I am doing, right? My overall project and task. Like in this case, we're doing a capital R reading. Yes, I digress to give you a little bit of background extra there on Biella, right? And also that then I'm coming to come back to it. So this is very cool. It's very powerful to be able to do that. And when we understand this with our learning, that we need to sort of take in, and then we need to process, then we need to apply, and that's all part of way of impeccability. Understanding the mechanisms of learning. This is something that is kind of a big deal for me personally, right? And something that I have skill in. Why? Because this is what I studied, and I don't mean like in go to university in this. When as I studied from age 10, every single second of my day, I wanted to learn, and I was so bent on learning. I made every effort to figure out how to learn. And much like Biella, I was in my own bubble, right? So I wasn't. I didn't have anybody to talk about my inner private world. It was just in my own bubble, right? I mean, I had a social side. That's another long story. But inside my private side, which wasn't secret, just private. Somebody asked, I would have told them. They never asked. But inside that private side, I was ignorant of stuff that I wasn't supposed to do. Yeah, which was brilliant, and that's a great saver. Because anybody who I had said, "Oh, you're crazy. Nobody can figure that out." Really, who do you think you are to try and figure this out? I was fascinated with that. Who do you think you are? Well, just take anybody who figured something out, in any kind of a field. Who did they think they were? They didn't know they were going to figure something out, and it would become some breakthrough, and they'd become famous or whatever. When they figured it out, they were nobody. Take Einstein. He was working as a clerk, right? He was an absolute nobody, the epitome of a nobody that you can imagine when he worked out theory of relativity. Now, if he had thought that, he would never have published it, but he did. And because he published it in scientific journals and stuff, right? But who did he think he was at the time? He wasn't arrogant or egotistical. He just thought he had a truth to share. Yes. So we have to be very careful of this cultural paradigm that says you can't do things, right? Now, luckily, I was spared that in my bubble. I never had any idea that this. I just like, well, it's like stuff that needs to be figured out. I'm going to figure it out, and I did. And I created a psychology of learning. Yeah, I may have reinvented the wheel. Doesn't matter. But my psychology of learning isn't based on theory. It's based on practice. Right? It's based on example, based on testing, right? And that's why it's very, very powerful, right? So in terms of my expertise on the psychology of learning is very, very excellent. And I can say this just honestly, I'm not being egotistical. It really is. It works, right? And this is, all these mechanisms that we are talking about when it comes to learning, like, having clarity of intent and then figuring it out for yourself, making it your own. That's very critical when it comes to learning. You don't make it your own, it's kind of wasted, right? And then you have to apply it, which is part of taking it into yourself, incorporating it, making it innate. But that's still not enough. You then have to practice it. Yes. And I'm talking about skills of being. We know this when it comes to playing tennis or whatever, but we don't apply that same logic when it comes to our personal skills of being, our personal ways of being, our personal ways of living, right? Just like in how to think, for instance, and how to feel. Wherever were you taught how to feel? You were taught what to feel, yes. Well, not taught necessarily, told. That's not the same thing as being taught how to feel. Yeah. Anyway, that's all part of Way of Impeccability. There's a lot there. There's a lot there, right? And it's in the book as well in different ways, right? We just have to pay attention. All right. So this thing of the inordinate becoming manifest. If you start to pay attention to the world, you'll see the inordinate becoming manifest all the time. And that is exactly what an anomaly is, right? I mean, other things too, but this. I mean, just the whole thing with Hyla and with the trees and the songs and all that. Isn't that the inordinate becoming manifest? Yeah, it's a theme on Nobelia, right? Their entirety as a culture is about the inordinate becoming manifest. They are inordinate people, yes, each and every single one of them. Right? And of course, in the greater scale things are going inordinate. A thread running through everything. She saw it happening everywhere. Biella reviewed the flow of events in her life lately. Right? Very simple little statement there, and you might just think, okay, it's the author describing what's going on. There's more to it than that. This review is a standard practice that the new nobility apply and is taught to the aspirants, right? It's part of Way of Impeccability, right? To review the flow of events, right? Is feeling not automatic and also individual? No, it's not necessarily automatic. This is the great myth, Norma, with feeling, right? That we assume it's automatic, right? I see this on the internet all the time where people say it in these exact words, but you can't choose how you feel. Really? What an absolutely preposterously absurd a perception to have, right? A belief to have. Simply because you are not able to choose how you feel doesn't mean it's not possible. Yeah? Of course, it's possible to choose how you feel. Yeah. Well, on the show Survivor, yes, and those people are eating beetles and the most ugly, horrible, terrible tasting food. It's like a standard one of the tests on the show Survivor, right? When all the people on the island and competing and all this stuff, right? Now, now, how they feel about eating that in their daily lives, they would never eat that. Yeah, it's horrible. It's terrible. It's like a really gross, and it's like torture almost to eat it. But yet they can put those feelings aside and eat it. Why? Because they want to win the challenge and win the money in the end. Yeah. You pay people, you can say, hey, I got $1 million for you to feel differently. Well, you see them change their opinions just like that, their feelings and moods. Yeah. So we can change our feelings and moods very easily. Yeah. We just need the motivation to do so. Yeah. We don't believe that this is the way things work. And of course, that belief corrupts us, which is why I was saying earlier the system we in is broken, is broken and flawed. That's a good word. Broken, flawed and broken. I like that. Floken, floken. Yeah. Anyway, um, so no, feeling is not automatic, but it certainly is individual. But more than that, Norma. Right? One thing that is in Way of Impeccability, this has made a massive difference to participants, is that there's this understanding that says just because you feel it does not mean it is necessarily yours. Right? Okay. Now take smells, right? In the comic books, you see the person sitting there, and then you see the smell coming through the air, and it kind of comes past their nose, right? So the smell is just happening to come their way, and they happen to smell it, right? Now, just because they smelt that smell, does it automatically mean it's coming from them? No, of course not. We know this with smells. Just because I'm smelling this smell doesn't mean I farted or something. No, right? Could come from somewhere else. My neighbor's cooking bacalao. cabbage or something. I don't know. I had a neighbor that was cooking. It smelled terrible. Like, oh my God, what are you making over there? Right? So just because we smell it doesn't mean it's coming from us. Emotions are exactly the same way. But we so been taught and conditioned on this, right? But but yet it's also contradictory. It's a bit of a square circle. On the one hand, you are saying, if you feel it, it's yours. But on the other hand, there's a thing being an empath or being sympathetic. What am I doing but feeling somebody else's feelings? Like, come on, seriously, you know, think about things a little bit. Put two and two together, right? So just because you feel it doesn't mean it's yours. We can feel all sorts of nonsense in the world, right? We can pick up like smells, and we have no idea where it comes from. So be very careful of assuming because you feel it, it's yours. No, you can be feeling somebody else's feelings that have nothing to do with you whatsoever. But of course, if you're going to confuse them, you're going to be in trouble. Secondly, just because I feel it doesn't mean I have to respond to it. Yes? Okay. And also, just because I'm feeling it doesn't mean I have to respond to it in a particular way. Right? So if I smell that smell and it's gross, I don't have to lose my mind and freak out and go crazy. I can say, "Oh, that's gross," or "I don't really care for that," and just carry on with what I'm doing. Yes. So we have a range of ways we can respond to smells and to feelings, right? So we can learn to have, like, I can smell the smell, but I don't have to have it affect me. Okay. I can feel the feeling, but I don't have to let it affect me. Whether that feeling is coming from inside me or from outside me makes no difference. I still don't have to take it into me. I still don't have to align with it. Yes. I don't have to take it on. Huh? I don't have to have it affect me. Right. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Just because I feel it doesn't mean I need to respond, says Sure. Yes, sure. Yes, 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 yes. And this is a big, big, big deal. When we start to understand that, feelings need to be associated with choice. This is what I said. We never got taught this as children. Imagine if you were taught as a child to say, hey, you feeling this, but you can learn to choose how you deal and how you respond to this feeling, right? We kind of learn it as we get older, right? You cry and you get fed. As you get a little bit older, that stops working. You get told, hey, stop crying, you're going to get your food, and you start trusting. Or if you had, say, ask instead of crying, instead of complaining, ask. Yes, ask nicely. Right? We sort of get told that, but not in such a clear way, right? So now, if we had this, and now furthermore, to say, wow, you may be feeling this or that, you may be feeling annoyed, but realize that you are choosing to do so. Oh, if you tell that to a child and they start thinking, wow, I can choose to get annoyed or not, I can choose to get irritated, bothered, stressed, upset. Man, I could choose to be happy instead. And have a very different child. You have a very different psychology growing up if you understand that you can choose. And then you say, why are you choosing this? That's what I would ask kids. And I ask people this. I ask myself this. Why am I choosing this mood, this feeling? Why am I continuing to choose it? Because I've already chosen it, right? Why am I continuing to choose it? That's a better question. Holy moly, no good reason. Okay, I change, right? Life would have been universally different for me and billions of others. Yes, absolutely, absolutely sure. Right. So this is all part of, this entire Way of Impeccability Moreness project. It is shifting the paradigm. Yeah. And these lives are also all about communicating a different paradigm like this. Yeah. Just this one simple thing of choosing your moods as opposed to having them chosen for you, being automatic, innate, and all this blah blah nonsense that we've been taught. It's complete and utter rubbish. And it's not my opinion that it's rubbish. It's rubbish because people themselves disprove their own nonsense, right? They say contradictory things. And this is why people are messed up because they get taught from a young age one thing and then they say the other thing. It's like, stop crying. Yeah, but if I'm not in charge of my moods and emotions, how can I stop crying? See, doesn't make sense, right? I'm upset. Well, stop being upset. Stop crying. Yeah, yeah, but you can't choose your moods. But no, now you're telling me to choose my mood. Ah, you know, just foolishness. And you know, all of this foolishness, look at the common theme here. It all comes from people not thinking past step one. They don't make that effort to just think that one step further, right? Like in this case of like when you somebody stop crying, you tell the child, right? What does that imply? Look at the implication. It implies you're telling the child to choose their moods. But then on the other hand, you go and tell them, well, you know, you can't choose your moods. Yeah. Why? Why do you say that to them? Because you are too lazy to choose your own moods and you don't want to have the responsibility for choosing your moods. So now you make up this rule to get yourself out of responsibility, effort. Yeah. And when we look at most of the nonsense in terms of that's the root of it. People trying to avoid responsibility for living, right? They want somebody else to take the blame. It's ridiculous. I mean, and so what? You know, it's ego. When you work it all out, it all fits in there. So this point of being able to choose your moods, this is a big deal, right? But I got, you know, this all follows from the sentence over here, right? Biella reviewed the flow of events in her life lately. This is a policy that all the new nobility do and the aspirants, right? They do it on a daily basis, specifically in the end of the day, you know, either just before going to bed or just before going to sleep when you're lying in bed, right? And I mentioned this yesterday too. And there are more specific details with this that go with it, right? So it's not just going over the day, right? So if you go over the day and you go over it, well, I'm just remembering it. What value is that? Well, no, when you're going over the day, your day particularly, and you go over it from the perspective of what could I have done more effectively, more efficiently, better? What did I do that I don't really care to do, and I don't want to do, that I don't want to repeat, right? You are now developing a self awareness, but there's more to it, right? So, first of all, you're going over your day from a particular perspective, right? The perspective of improvement. Yes, you're looking at what would have been better, what was good, and what you'd like to improve, what you say, oh man, I don't want that to have happened. So you're making a point to emphasize things appropriately. But there's more to it than that. Because now you say, well, okay, I don't want that to happen again. But that's not enough, right? Because you've done this before and it didn't really make any difference. You kept doing this right behavior. So now the technique here is imagine yourself to be both a movie actor and a movie director, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen outtakes of or documentaries on the making of a movie, and you watch real professionals make a scene. Yeah, sometimes you know you'll see that the clapboard, what do they call it? The scene, right? Where they snap that board, right? That sound is the cueing for the editors, by the way. That's why they use that because it makes a spike on the sound editing. And they know that's where the action started, right? For the sound editors. But anyway, so, okay, action, right? And they run a scene. But if you watch, sometimes you see on it says on there, you know, scene 23, scene 48, scene 96, or take 96, not scene, take 96, which means they've done the same thing 95 times before. Think about that, right? Okay, I don't know how much is average, but you know, it's very seldom that any movie scene or TV scene is done in one take. This is like unheard of, right? Always multiple takes. And if you actually watch them, you'll see like, man, actors got a problem with this. They don't quite have it right, right? And then then the director says, okay, now try it from a little bit more thoughtful perspective. And then you see the actor shift, right? They're saying the same thing, but kind of with a thoughtful vibe. And the director said, yeah, that's too much thoughtfulness. I need a bit of thoughtfulness, but a bit of carelessness thrown into it. Okay. Now the actor has carelessness and thoughtfulness kind of combined. And he said, no, I need more than that. You know, I also need to have a bit of caring thrown in there. Okay. And so on and so forth, right? And he says, well, yeah, you've got the caring right, but not quite. And they keep tweaking till they get it right. Yes. They do it over and over and over again. Now, when you take that review of your own day and you remembering the scene, you know, this person came and they said something nasty to me, and they do this on a regular basis. They keep trying to put me down and be clever, and I fall for it every time, and I get caught up and I get all embarrassed and whatever, right? So now take that scene and start running it through the way a director and an actor would do it. Yes. You replay it, but now you are both the director and the actor. So you tell your own self, okay, now try responding with a little bit of pause there, right? Instead of just reacting immediately. Oh, oh. And now you go into actor mode and you run through that scene, and the person comes and they said, oh, hello, jackass face. And you say, like, you just pause. You don't even say something back, right? And then you keep repeating this until you find ways of responding to it that work in the scene as a movie, right? That you're now comfortable. You've done it many times that you're comfortable, and you try different ones, right? Okay, one is a pause, and the other one you just don't react and you just walk by, whatever. You practice all different types of appropriate responses. Yes, and in your mind you are reliving this, right? And you're getting fully into it as much as you can, because when you do that, virtualness, when you fully immersed, has very similar effects to actually doing it in our regular reality, right? It's very powerful. And of course, the more you do it now, of course, you've got to go all the way. Then the next time this person comes along, you're now a little bit more prepared. You don't know what they're going to say, but you at least prepared with some abstract responses. And be understand this. Don't learn specific responses. Don't learn to say, okay, they're going to say X and then I'm going to say Y. That only happens once. Learn the abstract response, like a power pause, or just ignoring, or not caring, and undoing your ego. Right? Look at that, and then you have abstract abilities that you've cultivated, and it works in any situation because that's the magic of abstract. Right? Is the power of abstract. It can apply across the board. Now, this you've prepared. You've prepared ahead of time. You've prepared your emotionality. You've practiced choosing your emotional response because you've done it over and over in your mind, lying in the bed there of this particular scene that bothers you, right? Until you're comfortable with it. And then you move on. All right. When the person comes, you may still lose it a little bit in, but over time you get better at it, better and better. And it's just practice, right? But you aren't just every time reacting and you lost and you never get there, right? Because you always lost every time. In rehearsing and practicing, you have something to go and apply in that situation. At first, it's awkward, but then a little better and a little better, and that's what capital P practice is. Little better every time till you get good at it, right? We don't always have the opportunity to practice, but when we do, it's super, super valuable, right? And the more you practice, the more it carries over into other things, right? And particularly when it comes to choosing your moves, yes? And maintaining awareness, of course, being anticipating, which is why anticipation is such a powerful, powerful term and a concept and an ability to have this ability to anticipate because it allows you to set yourself. Like if you see your boss walking across the office floor, heading straight for you, oh crap, and you see that look on the face, I'm gonna get it now. When you see them coming, you can handle it, right? You can deal with it because you can set yourself. But if you're just working away there, la la la, happily away, going in, and the next thing, like, what the hell, and then you all freak out, and now you're like, you start reacting rather than responding, and then all sorts of rubbish comes out. You upset, you stressed, you bothered, and it's the worst possible way you could respond to this, right? So because you were taken by surprise. So when we can see stuff happening, we can set ourselves. Likewise, this rehearsal in the evening when you go over your day and you practicing ways of responding, ways of being, right? It's not just ways of what to say, it's ways of being because you can't to say is specific, but how to be on it. In other words, learn not to be upset by nastiness and people trying to put you down. Don't have a hierarchy ego. You figure out ways to deal with it that change your way of being. Yeah. And but this ability to set yourself ahead of time, you're in the right space and the mood to bounce things off, right? You're not so vulnerable as where you're just sitting in your bubble. Now, of course, you never want to be completely unaware in a bubble because that makes you vulnerable, right? So you always want to have some bit of awareness, like the divers, right? Number one rule of diving is always know where the surface is, right? Don't lose connection to the surface, no matter how much you immersed. So all of this comes in. Yes, that evening reflection is super valuable. Yes, 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 yes. Absolutely sure. I mean, it's again, something part of way of impeccability. It is inordinately valuable, right? Inordinately, especially when you do it and you're going through this and you practicing. different ways of being. Don't just do one. Yeah, practice many different ways. How to respond. How could I do this different? Like the director says, okay, let's try it this way. You don't know what's eventually going to be in the movie because that's the editor's going to decide, or at least maybe with the director too. It's going to depend on lots of factors. What scene is going to be used? So you don't know in the future when this thing plays out again. It may not play out exactly the same way, but you've now got a whole bunch of these responses already pre-practiced. So I'm ready to go, right? And the more you do this, the more you are practicing fluidity, evenness, and equanimity, and things like these abstract qualities that are you able to hold yourself together. You don't fall apart with just crap and nonsense, right? So you develop strength of character, and eventually you get to have independence of being. When you have independence of being, none of that stuff matters anymore. I mean, I'll be happy to give. If you can insult me and offend me, I'll give you $1,000. You're welcome to try, right? I'll make this an open offer. I can make it any amount, 10,000, 100,000. People might not take up the bet because they just think I won't be able to pay it, right? So I'll make it something but it doesn't matter what amount of money because it's just not possible. No matter what you say, it cannot possibly offend me because, well, if it's true, then I'm going to say, oh, thank you. And I'll take it as learning and I'll be very appreciative. And I'll say, shake your hand, say, thank you for this, right? And if it's not true, well, then it's not true. It's just nonsense. I don't know. Okay, well, it's just rubbish. And you're just talking nonsense. How can I possibly be offended at stuff that's untrue and complete rubbish and nonsense? It's not possible. So when you think this through, right? And I did as a child. I was forced to. I was in a situation where I could potentially be very severely teased and put down and be in a horrible space. I said, no, I don't want this in my life. And I figured out strategies to deal with it. And I did. And I didn't have that problem. My siblings did. Their lives were miserable. I never had a problem with it because you just think it through and it's like, duh, it's not like I have any superpower or skill. I'm just like, oh, just thought it through. I didn't buy into this idea of being teased or being offended or being insulted. Nope, 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 nope. So, yeah, evening reflection, very powerful. Anyway, so Biella is now, she's actually doing a review in the beginning of the day, right? But she's doing a review of just events lately, right? I mean, she also does that end of day review, but we can review at any time. Doesn't have to be. End of day is just convenient, right? The abstract of things, the abstract pattern of things as it pertained to her. This is what she's reviewing, right? Not just the things in themselves, but when you develop the skill and ability to review the abstract pattern. Sure, in particular, right? Pay attention to the abstract patterns in your life, right? You know this already, but now just as a confirmation, reaffirmation, re-emphasis of this. Paying attention to the events themselves is one thing, but when you start paying attention to the abstract pattern, you say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I'm seeing a pattern here and an abstract pattern. And that's super, super, super powerful, right? First, what had her intents been? Going back to basics, right? Clarity of intent, right? You cannot review anything if you're not aware of what your intents had been. It's meaningless, right? Because if you're reviewing without knowing what the intent is, it could be anything, right? So there's no particular significance and meaning. But once you know what the intent is, now it's connected, now it's relevant, now it's pertinent, right? So you do need to know and be aware of what your intents are. That's why clarity of intent is so important in the first place. Because if we don't have a conscious clarity of intent, and of course, by implication, purity of intent, we're just doing things. We're just putting intents out there, not even realizing what they are. And of course, later when you start looking at your things, you don't have that filter, that pattern, that cipher, right? Like a key, like with ciphers, right? In the wars. To unravel a cipher, like I'm the secret agent and I'm sending the cipher back to headquarters. They don't know what I'm saying unless they have the key. And of course, it's prearranged that they have the key to unlock the cipher. Now, behavior, events, what we do, right? If you simply just review it without knowing what the intent is, it's like looking at a cipher without the key, right? So intent is the key to understanding behavior. Yeah, very simple. Very simple. The cipher, when you look at people's behavior, it's like a cipher. It may seem like in a cipher, you may actually understand some of the words, but you don't know the meaning. Yeah. Uh, but when you got the key, you can unlock the meaning. Same thing with people. Understand their intent, or as Jones likes to say, understand motivations, understand humans. Yeah. Jones is an alien, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Sure. Oh, wow. See, anomalies. It's very subtle anomalies sometimes. You just happen to come right time, it happens, right? It's kind of anomalous in a way. And it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. So we're starting here with this clarity, right? What had her intents been to be a new noble, and everything it entailed was still the same. Her accepting of the full status of new nobility and the name had not changed anything, just as it did not for any new noble. So she's saying those factors, even though she had recently become officially a new noble, she's saying, well, did it make any difference? No, right? So she's just running through things and looking at factors of influence, right? Then there was the task with the delegates. Now, I think I'm going to stop there for today because, yes, 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 Norma. Yes, love you too, Norma. Love you very much. And love you for loving Sher. Yes, love you too, Sher. This is a big deal when we understand that and we can love each other. This is a big deal. This is a big deal, our ability to love each other. This is a massive, huge, wonderful deal. And it gives me great joy when my friends love each other. It's a very particular special joy. And just when people love each other, I guess. But I like to share, and when my love is shared, this is a magical thing. So, and I know I'm pretty positive that Sher loves you too. Yeah, I don't know. She may have left already and didn't respond there. So, all right. On that note, there we'll leave off here where Biella's getting to this point of the task with the delegates, right? And she's going to start reviewing this now because now we're starting a whole kind of a section here, and it leads to moreness, right? So this is where she gets to the gist of her reflection, right? So we'll start that tomorrow because we had a lot going on today. But a core takeaway for me that came about from this, a core takeaways, multiple. If I do a takeaway here, real quick, is this point about reviewing your day, reviewing your behavior, but not reviewing from a memory point of view like a historian. That's useless. No, reviewing it in the particular way, which is practicing alternatives, right? So you say, "Oh, I'm reviewing. I didn't care for that very much. I want to do better." Right. And then you practice virtually like this director and actor doing multiple takes of a scene in order to get it right. Yes, and then you that's practice, that's application, but you also go and obviously apply it in the real world, right? So it is this pre-practicing, which allows you to practice when the thing actually happens, to then practice. Then there's more practice, but now you're practicing more effectively and more efficiently, right? It's like the same thing with the actor, right? They've done some rehearsal and they know the scene, they know the lines, etc. If they had to learn that while doing the scene, that's going to make it much slower, right? So so we think of this evening running through the scenes as rehearsal, right? But rehearsal is practice. And then you actually go and do it. And that's, extra, more practice, right? Different, right? So this is very potent. And then the other major point, pleasure, 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 Norma. The other major point is about choosing our moods. And the other key point here is about unhooking from the nonsense of the world, right? To realize that the system is broken, the system is flawed, right? As in the very first quote, and we need a system outside of the system that we can trust. It has to be outside of the system, because if it's inside the system, it's part of the system, and you can't trust that because it's broken and flawed. We know this. And the system that we are looking to trust now is the universe. And we're saying, how can this happen? Well, we need the language, we need the connection. That's what anomalies are. So it all works out, right? It's all fits together. So there's very powerful stuff here. Very, very, very powerful, life-changing stuff that we can use and apply. It's always the key. Got to use it, got to apply it, got to do it, got to practice it, right? Got to practice it. Yeah. Oh, pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. Wonderful, Norma. I just love that you're here. All right. On that wonderful, marvelous note, I shall, well, first let me stop the screen share. There you go. Just wave goodbye. Bye-bye, Cheryl. Bye-bye, Norma. Bye-bye, Michaela. I hope you able to listen while you were working to most of it. And I'm keen to hear comments and feedbacks. Tell me next time we talk, all right? Or if you get a chance later, maybe in a lunch break or something, type it here. Put your comments. Put Michaela, put your comments in the comments on the live, right? I always see them and I always respond to them. And very cool. All right, all right. On that note, bye bye, bye bye, bye bye, everybody. End meeting for all.